Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and today I'm talking to Eric DePriester. Hey, Eric.
Hey, how you doing, Jeff?
Excellent. All right, so I met Eric at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival. This is kind of rare for Discover Indie Film. It was last month that we got to screen Eric's film at the Whitefire Theater, and it was fantastic. Happy to say, congratulations. You took home Best Screenplay, the Grand Jury Award for Best Screenplay for Treason. And between you and me, Treason was up there for a whole bunch of awards. In fact, if you hadn't gotten Screenplay, then I was going to have to start bending rules and saying, okay, we're going to give 2 films cast and 2 films. You know what I mean? Because it was, it's a great film. So I'm glad you got Screenplay.
Absolutely.
If you ever feel like telling your actors, yeah, you guys just, I feel bad that your actors were so good.
Yeah, well, and they're incredible. They're working for the minimum, and we did, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsal beforehand, and not, I kept them fed and I gave them places to sleep, but I'm not going to say that there was that nice of conditions. So really they put up with a hell of a lot, and, we filmed that whole thing 11 days. So really it's just a credit to their professionalism and just their creativity that we came out with the product that we have. They really left it all on that screen. So yeah. Love that cat.
Absolutely. Such a performance piece. All right, so before we jump into Treason, though, I always like to just find out a filmmaker's history. I guess I'm not going to mention a whole bunch of other things. At the end of this, I'll mention the Discover Indie Film TV series and stuff. But we should let people know where they can watch Treason, right? Because they can watch Treason right now?
Yep. Absolutely. So Treason right now is available to rent on VOD. So Amazon, Microsoft Store, all those places. And it's also free to stream on Tubi right now.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, so Tubi's a good choice. But, yeah, people should search for Treason, watch it, and then listen to this podcast because there might be some spoilers. I don't think we'll be too precious about it.
Yep, exactly.
Because it's been out there a little while, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's been out there for a year and 2 months at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's proof to everyone who's if you go online, then you can't do festivals anymore. And it was happens that the jury of the Sherman Oaks Film Festival looked at Treason and said, we want to show this film. So
yep.
It was an honor, sir. So
I appreciate it. It was our first public screening, so it was our honor as well.
Wow. Well, I guess, yeah, that's just our luck, though, that that COVID ended enough for us to go live, and yep. We were lucky to be able to have the Treason theatrical premiere. Very cool.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I know you wrote, directed everything for that film, but what's your history? When did you get locked into writing and filmmaking? Were you a film nerd as a young person? Did you play around with video cameras? What's your if you're a Marvel character called the filmmaker, what's your origin story?
Yeah, so I think as a kid I was kind of I want to say I just had interests all over the place. I read a ton. I would say I read more than anything as a kid growing up, and watched a lot of movies. Mel Brooks was huge growing up, and at some point I became obsessed with the John Cusack movies. I was watching all those, and I got my dog with a squeaker toy. A bunch of action movies and horror movies with my brother. I've always loved just watching as many films as possible, and I think I was even subscribing to Entertainment Weekly at a young age. But I think it never seemed like a thing I would do or could do, or just. I didn't know anyone personally in the industry. It just seemed like it's a thing I enjoy. I even acted in high school and college. I did comedy improv for years, and did a couple plays in college. And but it just never seemed now I should make a film. And after college, I was writing fiction for a while. I was doing short fiction and poetry primarily. Did some music journalism, a lot of copywriting. At some point, I love fiction still. I think fiction, in some ways, might be my favorite art form of all. I mean, I love film to death, don't get me wrong. But what I found I was missing most in fiction is that it was me alone in a room with zero feedback and zero collaboration. And it's interesting, and I still have fun doing that, but you don't really put it out in the world the same way, and you don't have that hey, let's get that community together and just create something. And just super crassly, it's also just not really a good way to make money, unfortunately. Unless you're making like a YA novel or something that's like a Dan Brown novel, something super, super poppy, which I think is probably not in my skill set as far as fiction. It never seemed like I was going to be a successful author that doesn't also have a day job. So you put all those factors combined, and I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, I just started writing mostly TV scripts. I thought it'd be easier to be a TV writer first. There seemed to be more employment opportunities, and but also some film scripts. And honestly, I thought I was going to be a writer. I wanted to write for films. I wanted to be staffed, but I never thought I was going to be a director until we did Treason as a play, and somebody had to direct it. So I just happened to direct it, and that went well enough. And we've turned it into the feature and now a short film. But so all to say, I've always loved film. I've always been very interested in film. But if you asked me even 5 years ago if I was ever going to be a film director, I'd say probably not. So it's an accidental path that makes some sense in hindsight.
Absolutely. And let me ask, what part of the country were you growing up in?
A little bit all over. So I was born in Alaska, moved to Texas, LA, back to Texas, and then formative years in Orange County.
Oh, got it. So not too far from the industry, but not close enough to see it as whatever.
Exactly.
Really accessible.
And this was all suburban, right? We weren't living in the city centers. We were living in Thousand Oaks or down in Irvine. So, my dad was a corporate accountant and then a CFO for a mutual fund company. My friends' parents were executives at ad agencies and that kind of thing. I didn't know Spielberg's kid. It didn't seem like that was even a thing.
For sure. And you were always drawn to writing. And I actually think it's very natural for writers to move into directing. Because, especially once you started writing plays and screenplays, you're constantly visualizing what would be on screen. So you're already directing in your mind. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's honestly when my screenwriting took a leap, is when I was able to actually start visualizing the scenes in whole as I was writing them. And before, it was just kind of, hitting the right sitcom beat, or just kind of what I thought a heist movie should have. And once I was able to actually visualize, that made me a much better writer and ultimately, a better director.
And Treason was performed on stage first. When you started writing it, were you writing it as a play? Were you writing it as a screenplay and then thought, I could do this on stage?
So I had the idea, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just the idea, just a little nugget, and I had no idea what to do with it. Maybe it was a movie, a TV show, I just didn't know. And then, like say 3 years ago, I was in a playwriting course at UCLA, and I just wrote a scene for that, and then I wrote another scene, and just soon enough, I had enough scenes to kind of have a short play. And at the end of that course, the professor was super complimentary and helping me kind of structure it out a little bit more, and just I had enough encouragement that I can make a full play out of this. So again, that kind of came by it honestly, where right place, right time, and that was the format. I think it ended up being a great thing because it was something I could self-produce as my very first production, whereas if I had written even a low-budget short film as my very first thing, I feel like there's a departure of I'm not ready to put something on film, but a low-stakes play with very minimal sets, it seemed like a good first step.
Yeah, and as you were watching the play and watching it be rehearsed and then watching it be performed, part of Edge, right? Or
the Fringe Festival.
Fringe, right, Fringe. Were you watching it? Did you start picturing where cameras would go, or not yet?
I didn't think that far ahead. I wasn't that ambitious, honestly. Not that I wasn't that ambitious. I was so laser focused on this is going to be the best stage production that I can possibly make it. So it's just, how can I talk to my actors. How can I do this? How can I better promote things? Because I was the entire promotion team. I was the producer. Like, I did everything for that play. So it was just, it was a ton of work, ton of time. It was wonderful and worth it, but I just didn't have any perspective. So it was after, actually, the sheriff in Treason, Pierce Minor, great actor, great friend. He was I'd never met him before Fringe, and I was just talking to him on the curb outside of one of the shows, and he was like, well, this is probably a movie, right? You could add a couple scenes here, and it's all pretty much single location, and you can shoot it pretty cheap, and that just got the wheels spinning, and yeah, one thing led to another, and we were making a movie before too long.
That's fantastic. I'm going to pay you. I think this is a pretty huge compliment. I mean, obviously I watch tons of movies for the festivals, and, you see lots of play adaptations, and I actually honestly did not sniff out that Treason was a play adaptation. I actually think the adaptation to screen is so natural, and the environment that you shoot out there in the desert is such a big part of it that I didn't feel at all like I was watching a play. It was complete. It was cinema. It was a movie.
I really appreciate that. I mean, that was the goal. That was probably my biggest concern going out there, is I didn't want to just film a play and just do like really theatrical presentational staging. Like, I hadn't filmed anything before, so I wasn't going to pretend to have a whole bunch of exciting new camera angles in my back pocket, but I knew enough to like not just do these very flat, just very basic setups. Like, it had to be cinematic. There had to be a compelling reason for me to put it on film, not just because I could. And to speak to the location, like, honestly, it's the biggest cliche, or one of the biggest cliches, right? New York is the fifth character or whatnot, but that desert really it brought so much life. And we would just kind of wander off and see a big pile of junk, half a mile from the set, and just start shooting that junk and just see what was going on. There's so much weirdness in the house we rented. There's just so much weirdness all around us that, it just really brought so much life and character to the film.
For sure. And I mean, and it added, maybe even compared to the stage play, but it added authenticity in a way, because you can totally picture that a character like your lead would find himself there, like that far away from urban America.
Absolutely. Well, and the whole thing is loosely based on a dude that actually does this stuff, who lives in Northwest Nevada, so similar region. And then just visually speaking, I think that this, in some ways, this story is kind of like the cliche. It's like the broken down American dream, something like that, right? Where you see these big standards and principles of Americana that are just kind of, we see the broken down, just kind of corrupted version of that's just left to rot. And I think using these stark Western backdrops, but in a kind of trashy, junkyardy way, I think it's playing with the iconography with the same way we're playing with the character, where we're just, and also I love Westerns to death. Like, I'm actually writing a Western right now, so there's part of me that just wants to make a Western as much as possible. So if I could play in that landscape, that was a huge plus. But yeah, I think I was able to visually communicate thematically what we were doing.
Yeah, and another thing, while you were talking, I thought about, you talked about the use of that and all that, and I couldn't help but love, when you were talking about your main character, the title, because the title works. I'm just a sucker for a title that works in more than one way. Mm-hmm. So the fact that his daughter's committing treason against him, but he's committing treason against the United States, and then his wife, like pretty much almost everyone commits treason in that family. Let alone, I don't think the neighbors do, but
yeah. Well, and crassly, it's so like 100%. Like, they're all committing treason, and we even have the line toward the end. Like, but very crassly, I wanted to figure out a way to market the play as being, if not a direct condemnation of Trump or a response to Trump, or in that milieu. And initially I was titling the play The Republic. And, that's fine. It would just be super generic and vague. You're not sure exactly what you're getting into. And, maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but it's not as grabby. But Treason, it's way more punchy, and I think instantly it associates with Trump. I think if you see that poster and you see the word treason, part of you, even if you don't all the way make that connection, that's on your mind somewhere. So, I thought it was an effective way to market it, and then, a good summary of the family.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you find yourself, I'm curious, I think one of the things that you use so well is the daughter's videography. Mm-hmm. Was that on stage too, or was that something you came up with adapting it for screen?
So I think we referenced her editing the videos on stage. We didn't show the videos on stage, but we actually filmed versions of the videos for our promo for Fringe to put on social media and all that. So we actually filmed a State of the Union desk piece, and we filmed some backyard drills, a much pared down version from what we see in the film. But that was always part of it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because that adds a level of cinema when you're going from what she's shooting to behind the scenes essentially, and of course those might be your best comedy pieces. I feel like that's when you really cut loose and just have fun with it.
Well, and that's when we had a little bit more wiggle room on the schedule, and we were able to just let those two act. And Jeff and Colby, father and son, they just had this great dynamic, and just their comic chemistry was just undeniable. And actually, it's a dark scene. I find it absolute, but it's the last video they shoot where it's the murder video. By far the scene where we had to hold back laughter the most on set, where people were just, I think at least one or two takes were completely ruined just because we could not hold ourselves in. It was just too completely ridiculous. But we, I wish we could have shot for another week at least, just get some more color, and just, we had so much improv, so much fun improvising out there. I would love to just let them loose for longer.
Yeah, I feel trite saying it, but it was so humorous and so ridiculous. But you did it all a good year before January 6th or whatever. And then January 6th comes along and makes it seem like these guys would have been there.
Yeah. Well,
and they would have helped build those gallows and start chanting "Hang Mike Pence." Like it's like the fact that they're threatening the life of a dummy is a lot less ridiculous today, right, than it was when you shot it.
It was funnier last year, 100%. And I guess it's always been dark, right? It's always had that edge, right? There's lines that are meant to, kind of set you back and shock you a little bit and clutch your pearls, and then maybe you laugh at it. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. But post January 6th, it got very uncomfortable. I think one of my close friends watched it right after, and then told me I need to watch it again. And I had trepidation because it feels very relevant in a way that I don't necessarily want to be relevant. But I guess that's a good thing, right? I think in some way it's going to make the film have a longer shelf life. I think you can kind of look at Treason now as it was birthed as a protest piece to try to get people to vote Trump out of office, and I think you could now probably look at it as like a comic eulogy for his administration and the culture that he spawned. So I guess it's been made more relevant by their antics, but I think I prefer a more obscure film and a more rational world if I could have that choice.
I completely understand your sentiment, and sorry, you don't get it. You don't get a more rash. It's quite obvious that the world's not going to become more rational anytime soon. If only enough people saw your film that they realized that they should just declare their own countries and leave ours alone. That would be. I wish it was a roadmap.
I do wonder about that. Like because now that it's out in the wild, right? It's discoverable. There hasn't been that much press or reviews about it. So like, I think that there's every chance that somebody's just streaming along and just clicks onto Treason and doesn't really know what it's about. I'm genuinely curious if someone would be able to watch the film and misconstrue it so that it's a recruitment video and not a satire. I don't know. That thought worries me. So I haven't gone too deep down that rabbit hole, but I am very curious.
I'm going to predict, and I have as an American, I have every right to just have an opinion like an asshole, and I have family members, right, who are of that ilk, and I think they'd love the film, and I think just like we discussed at the Q&A at the festival, that there is a love, there's a respect for the character.
Sure.
And Jeff LeBeau's performance, I think, takes it to a level of like, you just can't hate this guy.
Yep.
So I actually think that I think it might just get a loving embrace from I'll just refer to them as the January 6th crowd. Like, the people thought that the January 6th crowd was in the right, might think that this film totally nails it. And not in a bad way,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you made a political film, so you made it so well that I think both sides can appreciate it.
Well, I think it's, for me as a person with a certain political philosophy, I think that worries me a little bit. But as an artist, that's what I should do, right? If I make something that's basically a film diatribe, who cares? Who's going to watch that? Whose mind is that going to change? And that's not art. That's a lecture. That's a lecture disguised as art with like some cute framing and a nice character that delivers the speech. Like, I don't know, if there needs to be a conversation. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth making.
Yeah, it sounds like you're too dedicated to the arts and too good a writer to have made this just a hack piece where you're just absolutely ridiculing your characters.
Yeah, and I also, honestly, you talk about the about having empathy for the January 6th crowd and stuff. That's extremely intentional. Like, yes, I am mocking a lot of that, but I think it's impossible to look at our modern culture and not think that we are critically missing so much empathy in our world. Like, we just have this gigantic gap of understanding and communication. Like, we don't need more vitriol. We don't need more like crazy, exaggerated attack. Like, we need a little bit of, comic attack. We need to kind of grease the wheels a little bit. But yeah, we need understanding. That's the main thing we're missing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you and I have said things that people might take as extremely liberal, but
sure.
I actually do understand why the people we're referring to as January 6ers or whatever you want, or Trumpers, based upon the information, right, that their confirmation bias has them living in the ocean of information they live in, they're making fairly rational decisions. The idea that everyone's crazy and stupid, I don't think flies. I just think that they, whatever. I have nephews I love who live in a world where that's the only information they get. So, of course, they were like, telling me that, oh, man, of course Biden didn't even come close to winning,
Yep.
So it's not a hack job. It's not an insult to people. You are wonderfully saying that people can have differences of opinion and still get along.
All right, that's democracy, right? That's what we all signed up for.
Yeah. And actually, your neighbor does a good job of the neighbor character. He's definitely a bit of the heart and soul of the film too. He's always trying to work it out like friends.
Yeah, I would say. The daughter is closest to who I am, what I think, how I feel about the overall situation, and the neighbor is kind of what I wish I could be. where he's able to kind of take things in, take a step back, and take the high road, and just kind of see the greater good, and just accept how it's dealt, and just kind of play the hand the right way. So it's if we could all act like the next door neighbor Raymond, that would be a nice world.
And the daughter, so Emma and Colby, the daughter and son, they were in the play?
Yep, exactly.
Wow, good casting, even at the play level.
Well, and that was, we did an open call. I think I saw 140 different actors submitted to Backstage, and we probably read 20 for each part, and Em and Colby were just pretty instantly. We knew they had something special, and once we saw them read together, it was, there's no other choice.
And impressively, their performances made a wonderful transition from stage to screen.
Yep.
Because that's like, some people kick ass on stage and then they suck in front of a camera.
Yeah. Well, and Colby I don't think Colby had ever acted on screen before. I know Emma had done some short films and had, I think maybe in her undergraduate work, she'd done some more training. I believe Colby had only done stage work before. But so Ra, who plays Raymond, the next door neighbor, was also in the play. And Ra's been, he's been in film for years. Like, he was on the show Oz way back in the day. So, I mean, basically Ra became our coach for a lot of things, right? He was able to, like if Colby was worried about how he's going to look in this or that, like, Ra could kind of take him aside. And it's like, this is something to prepare for, and this is how I look at my characters. Like, it was obviously I did a lot of that work as a director, but it was so helpful to have a member of the cast also be kind of just like side coaching. So I didn't have to be as involved. It's just kind of, it was a more collaborative, just everyone pitching in kind of thing. But those actors all just nailed it.
There was a real wonderful community sense at that screening where, particularly, right, your lead actor, Jeff LeBeau, chose to just let the young people go on stage for the Q&A, and he stayed up near the back row. Like, he was like, let them have their time in the sun. I've been acting forever. And and it seems like Ra had the same, like there was a very warm, almost parental. But I got the sense that there was a lot of care among the cast for each other and everyone for the project itself. Like it's just so nice that, I mean, I actually did want those actors to come sit on stage too with us, but I got what they were doing. Like, I understood that they're like, highlight the kids.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I think it's a lot of it is hiring the right cast and crew, right? Just finding the right people and just crewing up with good, reasonable people that are going to be able to go to the desert and not lose their shit and not be a prima donna and just kind of show up and do good work. And I, not to toot my own horn too much, but I think part of it too is just setting the tone, right? Like, knowing that I hadn't directed anything beforehand, I was just consuming every interview I could with every showrunner, every director, every cinematographer. I was just, what do I do? How do I approach set life? How should I be doing this whole endeavor? And I think my biggest inspiration for just atmosphere is Michael Schur, the guy that does Parks and Recreation, Good Place, started on The Office, Saturday Night Live back in the day. But Parks and Rec and The Good Place particularly, you listen to any interview with any cast or crew member, and they sing his praises. It's just nothing but, this was the best work experience of my life. I didn't know film could be like this. Everybody was listened to. Everybody had an important opinion. We would break at a reasonable time. Nobody was yelling. There was laughter on set. Like, that's always, that was, if we weren't having fun on set, particularly in a comedy, I don't think that we're going to be heading in the right direction. And that's not to say there weren't stressful days. Of course, there was times where it got a little tense and I might have raised my voice, or somebody was a little bit on the gun for, we were just rushing to get that shot before the light went down. But in general, it was almost more so than the film itself sometimes, was create that great vibe on set and trust that great inspired people will produce great work. And if you're going to henpeck everyone and just micromanage things, you're going to get worse work. You just need to trust the artist you got to do the job and just make sure everyone's happy.
Yeah, I feel like you took what I refer to as the Soderberghian point of view. Mm-hmm. I saw him do a Q&A after Traffic, and someone asked him something about how good the performances was, and I believe his answer was, he goes, my job as director is to create a velvet-lined chute that the actor can just get in and slide right to where my job is just to give that person the ability to just land right where they need to and not have any stress about anything, mm-hmm. and just perform as comfortably. He's like not one of those directors who says, these people are my puppets and I'm working their mouths, from behind the camera. It's literally my job is to make them artists.
Huh. Well, and he's honestly one of my biggest role models, cinematic. Like, if I could have anyone's career, Soderbergh might be my pick, just as far as the range of products, the range of formats, his experimentation versus big budget. Like, the fact that he's always pushing the artistic boundaries, like I love that he has that method as well. But I think I love Fincher, I love Kubrick, I love some of these very controlling puppet master like directors. To me, I don't have that specific a vision, so I feel like it would be ludicrous in the first place for me to I've seen that line delivered that exact same. No, I haven't pictured that line that exact way. There's room for interpretation, but also I like being surprised. I like being delighted. I like to watch an actor do something so interesting and so engaging, and maybe not anything like what I wrote, maybe the exact opposite of what I wrote, maybe we threw out the script, or maybe it's the script and it's just a slight little subtle wink that I didn't ever expect. But why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want a delightful surprise every day on set? I think it takes a lot of the magic and joy and a lot of the life out of filmmaking.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously you weren't writing a magnum opus where you weren't writing a Kubrickian type script where you are going to demand you wrote a stage play, and what is more collaborative than director and actors on stage? You are, again, creating the situation for them to go on stage and perform for the audience, and it's far less controlled, right? Stage is really a writer's medium more than a director's medium. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's ultimately an actor's medium, just in the sense that they have control every night. And
actually, stage is the actor's thing. And then TV is really the writer's thing, and then film is the director's. I'm saying the word thing, but it's actually, I'm forgetting the term. But I've heard it said before that TV is about the writers.
Yep.
Stage is about the actors, for sure. So it was really wonderful that continued over into Treason, the film.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, they did an amazing job, and honestly, I was able to test the material out and see what jokes were hitting and where we needed more dramatic weight. And I made a much, much better film just by those 7 performances, and really just and the performance of the actors, especially the younger actors. I think Colby and Emma they just had a more lived in character. Like they knew those characters inside and out. So by the time we filmed, they didn't have to think about motivation or what they're doing or what Kyle might think in the situation. Colby knew Kyle. Colby was Kyle. He'd been living as Kyle for, half a year at that point. So he could just bust something out and I think that's why the improv was so good with him. He knew that character inside and out.
Yeah, absolutely. I got the kind of question that only a festival programmer would ask.
Sure.
But you have referred to it as comedy many times, but you submitted it to us as drama, I think. Is it a pain in your ass having to choose between comedy and drama with this one?
I hate it. Yeah, I hate it. I don't know. It's like what do you consider a Coen Brothers film? Not that I'm comparing myself to the Coens. Ultimately, sure, I'd love to make a film like the Coen, but like Barton Fink. I think it's hilarious. It's probably a drama. I don't like.
It's funny. Every time I've heard them speak, I go, they just consider themselves comedy writers.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think, and
it's just sometimes they're so dark in their comedy that people think it's drama.
Exactly. It's very dry. And like every now and then, like I'd say No Country is probably a straight drama for the most part. But I mean, that's in general, those are my favorite films. Like we'll talk later. Like The Graduate is a drama, but it's hilarious. And I would probably call it more of a comedy than anything. But I think culturally speaking, it's considered a drama. But I've always loved art that just kind of toes those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing should be... I mean, obviously, I'm with you, and I wish that we didn't need these categories and things, but actually I think it, as a practical level, it just helps spread the love and attract more things if it's just... especially because award-wise, I think comedy always gets the shaft, and so you've got to have separate awards for comedy and horror and sci-fi, because otherwise... Even at an indie film festival, man, the award jury is going to... When we only gave an award for Best Feature Film and it didn't have genres involved, it always went to a drama. It's just, you can't get it out of people's heads that serious stories are more award-worthy. I don't get it, because it's so much harder to do comedy.
Oh, 100%. Well, and you see actors that are delivering amazing comedy for years, and now they find themselves forcing themselves into roles that are just like overly dramatic and just saccharine, and just they've had much better performances, but now we're worried about them playing a psychotic or some nonsense. Like, the ghettoizing of comedy in the industry is it's a serious problem.
Well, and I won't rattle off a ton of examples, but I'm sure we could both name a bunch of comedic actors who are consistently brilliantly funny, and then every once in a while they do drama, and it's also brilliant. And anytime one of those dramatic people tries to step into comedy for a minute,
nope,
flat.
It's a different muscle. It's an entirely different muscle.
Yeah. And I guess you can learn it, but I almost feel like saying that, like, you just have to have... I don't know if you can learn to be funny.
I think you can learn...
You can learn to be funny, or you can hone your talent.
Yeah. You can learn tone, and you can learn, like, physical comedy and stuff, but what I don't think you can learn is timing. There's just this natural comedic timing where even if you know the exact right joke and you know that there's a setup coming... Maybe you're half a second off. Maybe you're 2 seconds off. Maybe there's just a weird hitch in your voice. Like, it's hard to. I don't think you can teach timing. And
it's certainly harder for when you're casting an indie film. It's not that hard to find good dramatic actors, but to find good comedic actors is rough.
Absolutely.
That's why you totally nailed it with Colby and Colby Rummel and Jeff LeBeau. I might as well use their full names. I got them in front. So, yeah, they deserve the credit, because, oh my God, they really formed a comedy team.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of comedy or comic actors performing drama, I spoke to Colby before we went out to shoot about my theory of why Will Ferrell is a good dramatic actor is because, in my years in improv, the best acting I ever did in improv is when I was fully committed to the scene. I fully invested in that reality, and I wasn't like trying to make a big joke or making a big like characterization of the a caricature out of the thing. I was just fully committed to that absurdity. So I think that ability to just really commit to the insanity, if you can transfer that into drama, I think that's Will Ferrell. That's why he can exist in both worlds. But that's talking to Colby. Like, I wanted him to take it as seriously as possible. Like, obviously knowing what we're doing, it's all for a goal. But I remember sitting down and coming up with a list of all the action movies that in reality Kyle, the character, probably would have watched and would have been copying. So I said, well, Colby, you should sit down and watch Rambo and just really commit to the reality of a 16-year-old that has watched Rambo and now is going to sneak through his neighbor's yard. And, to his credit, Colby just really found that character and was really just committed so hard to that. And Jeff was just... He was just a total character. Just, he he was a little bit method on set. He had to call him Grant for most of the time, and he would just kind of waltz around and just he had a very natural, very just kind of organic delivery, where he kind of work his way up in takes and just kind of find the material a little bit as we're filming. So I think that kind of off the cuff, just kind of easy chemistry combined with Colby's just militant insanity was just a powder keg for comedy.
Absolutely, and both did it perfectly because, like you said, if they had gone for laughs, it wouldn't have worked.
Exactly.
It was their commitment to the characters and commitment to the story, and then they allowed it to. They didn't worry about being funny; they worried about being true, and the truth is funny.
Yep, exactly.
But they, never a wink. Never. It's just absolutely. It's great work. Obviously, great on the page.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we're covering the film pretty well. And you mentioned it was 11 days.
Yep.
So, what was your experience like? Were you just stressed for those 11 days, and then during the edit you realized, wow, I nailed it, or how did you feel about making this first film?
So
because it's a first film, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never, I'd shot some films with my brother and my neighbors when I was 8. This was the first thing I'd done that was actually, a work, like an actual film.
Yeah. The courage to say, I'm going to make a 90-plus minute film. I'm not going to, dip my toe in and shoot the first 10 pages and see how it comes out.
I mean, it's that was a combination of naivete and a little bit of arrogance of just saying, sure, I can pull this off. But honestly, I went out to the desert with the thought that I'm going to make a good sample, right? We just had this play, and now I've got the cast together, and just the bare bones of the shoot wasn't that expensive when I was first looking at it. So I was like, well, we'll just go get some footage that I can show a manager, and that's going to be easier to show them than a script, and this will lead to the next thing, and then one day I'll be able to shoot a real movie. And I think that that modesty of just let me just go in and do a good job and just see what happens. I think it served me well, because it just made me work hard, and I didn't take anything for granted. But also just, I didn't have time to step back and think and just take it all in and have any perspective on it. It was just a manic rush to the finish line. So there were some points where watching dailies that I knew that it was going to become more than just a project that I could show a representative. I knew that we could sell it to a streamer or a distributor. It was becoming a real film, and that excited me. But it didn't change my process, because I just didn't have any choice, right? I would get up at 6 a.m. and start washing dishes and chain smoke a couple cigarettes with some coffee, and then just, run around like a madman for 14 hours, and then maybe have an hour or two of relatively quiet, and then get up and do it all again the next day. I was stressed, but I was having the time of my life. I've described it as the most difficult and the most fun thing I've ever done. But at the time, it didn't seem difficult. It just seemed necessary. It was just, we just have to do it. And I'm tired, and maybe I'm hungry or cranky or whatever. It just, there's no choice.
And did the edit come together wonderfully? Was that just a great experience?
Yeah, the edit was smooth. So we had our DIT on set. Ryan Conlon was my co-editor. So he had 60 to 70% of a rough cut done by the time we left set. So I had a rough cut of the film a week after we wrapped. It was a very, very quick process. And
but who does that? Is that the Edgar Wright thing, that to have the edit done while you're working?
And I think Soderbergh does that too. I think he edits dailies every night.
Man,
I think ideally, I've read some directors that will finish their film and then take 2 weeks off and go to Scotland and hike around for 2 weeks in the Highlands and then come back. That seems much better. I would prefer that. But the reason we had a rushed production schedule and then rushed post-production is the entire thing was done in mind of let's get it out before November of 2020. So we wrapped at the end of November 2019, and I knew it was going to take some time to reach out to distributors, maybe enter the festival circuit if we're going to do that. So we had a final cut, I think, 3 months later, beginning of March. And that was just 3 months obsessively working on it every day, having my editor come as much as he could and just showing it to literally every person that was remotely interested in it, and a lot of people that weren't interested in it. But just taking in all that feedback and just trying every last variation. But
and this film, are there no VFX at all?
I mean, there's like light VFX here and there, like taking out the reflection of a camera or something here, and there's like a little bit of color correction on some of the shots it's a little bit more dramatic, but yeah, very little.
Color correction doesn't count. Yeah, that's color correction. Yeah, I mean, it feels like a good old fashioned organic, like an indie film of an earlier era in a way. I don't think we get as much of this as we should.
Well, and I think at its base, it's just a good old fashioned character drama, right? There's nothing that interesting about not that it's uninteresting, but there's nothing novel about the style or the plot, or it's just putting some relatable characters in a situation and seeing them eat at each other, which are some of my absolute favorite movies, but unfortunately, it's just not what's getting made.
Yeah. It has that element of that slice of life element too that I miss so much from films. I mean, I remember films like a film like Secrets and Lies.
Yep.
It's easy to forget, but we saw her working as an optometrist for quite a while just to get a feel for the character. And like Yuli's Gold was like 20 minutes of him working with honey, before the drama kicked in. We used to get a feel for characters before it just, jumped in. So, yeah, you certainly give us a feel for what it's like to live out in the exurbs.
But so even that, I initially the film opened with him at the bar. So the first scene was going to be, you're not really sure who this guy is, and he starts giving this whole weird pitch, and then you're dragged more slowly into his world. But a note that I was given on the edit was they wanted to know up front who this guy was and what his deal was a little more clearly. So now we start with that radio address. So even though this is a more patient character drama, there's still some, I had to think, like, if random person puts on this film and she starts watching it and it doesn't hook her in a minute, that's not good, because I'm not a name, my cast aren't names, no one involved is a name. It has to hook somebody within those first 30 seconds to 2 minutes of watching. So we had to be hookier up front,
and I think it does hook. I mean, particularly Jeff's performance as Grant, just even like the white guy Aikido he's doing.
Yep.
Nothing like a shirtless middle-aged man to just like pull you in and just make you go like, oh man, I want to know what he's about, because this guy is something.
And another just brilliant improv where I think we were coming back from the ditch digging scene and we had some nice sunsets, so we shot some stuff with Colby and then we shot some stuff with Jeff, and it was just get some weird stuff out of the desert and see what happens. And it turned into your key hook at the top of the film. Absolutely. That's fantastic. Yeah. All right, so then what was your experience? I think this is mostly listened to often by other filmmakers and people who want to make film. It's fun. Yep. It's always cool when I get an email from someone who listens to the podcast and they're like, I don't know, they're pretty inspired. So what was your process getting it into streaming? Did you feel free to share what you do and don't want to share? Yeah, I don't know if you went to all those companies that do it, or if you went on your own. So the two, it seemed like you can either direct contact the distributors, you can get a sales agent, or you can go through festivals and try to get a distributor meeting at the festivals. We had the final cut, and then we still had sound and color correction and whatnot. I didn't think festival was a likely thing for us because best case scenario, we have a final film by May. In reality, it was end of June. So if we're entering a festival for the fall season, there's no way we get distribution before the election. So that just seemed entirely off the table. I thought about the sales agent route, and honestly, I probably would have gone the sales agent route if directly contacting the distributors hadn't worked first. So me and my producer found a couple articles and just lists of companies that are open to open submissions, and we emailed probably 20 to 30 different companies with our trailer and a little description, and we heard back from a number and sent some screeners out, and then we got an actual offer from 1091 Pictures, who we ended up going with, and then we were in talks with another company, and they're offering pretty similar terms. In fact, the other company was probably offering a little bit more favorable terms, but we went with 1091 because, just frankly, I knew of some of their movies, right? I was able to pull up their catalog and I've seen and I like American Animals and Digging for Fire and a couple Taika Waititi movies. I think Boy, they've distributed actual films that I know of, which is a good sign for the kind of distributor you're looking for. We signed with them and had a VOD release on October 6th. So that was out on all the rental platforms for 2 months exclusively, 60-day window, and then after that we're on free to Prime for 4 or 5 months, and then Amazon had its culling of all the indie releases. So now we're on Tubi, but. 1091's been good to work with. They've been very, very clear on everything they're doing, very transparent about the business practice. I might have ended up getting my own PR person to just kind of supplement everything around the release, but no complaints.
Fantastic. That's a good thing for people to hear. I think that if you make a good film, solid. And I'm going to assume you cut a pretty good trailer too. I don't bother watching trailers. I like to think they're on Film Freeway, but reaching out to 20, 30 companies and getting your film out there that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so what are you planning next? You said you're writing a Western?
Yeah, so I shot a short film with M Center from Treason, composed by Francois from Treason as well. And we submitted that to a number of festivals for 2022. Hopefully that just get a little more momentum with that and start taking some meetings in town. But in the meantime, I'm working on a horror Western feature that's, I don't know, I haven't seen that many horror Westerns, and it's, a combination of two genres that I absolutely love, ideally my next film to direct would be a horror. I like the genre. I think it would be good to differentiate my catalog a little bit, and then just again, super crassly, I think it would be a good thing for my career to have a little bit of a poppier hit to just kind of break out into the public consciousness a little bit more, and then have a little bit more weight to throw around creatively. So I'm under no delusions that a follow-up to Treason would be the big popcorn hit, and I've got some other weirdo ideas that I absolutely love that maybe not quite the right time, but I feel like I've got one horror comedy that's ready to go. I could film it tomorrow, and I would love to shoot that. But the horror Western, similar idea where it just... I think it taps into culturally something that could, get a little bit bigger.
I can't help but to think of Soderbergh again, because if there's one thing that director has done, and writer he has played in all the genres. Yep. In fact, I think I heard him give an interview recently where he said, I would be a lot more successful if I'd just done one thing.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
if you saw I could have been a PTA, but I have a completely new style every time.
Yep.
And so, although I actually think he's wrong. I think I can always spot one of his shots. I love when he does those. Like there's certain shots he does that no one else would touch.
Well, and like I think a similar, maybe my all-time favorite director, and like I think best is probably Kubrick. There's all sorts of shades of the discussion, but my favorite would probably be Martin Scorsese. And he's another guy where if you look at his library, it's so diverse, right? Yes, he has all the crime that everyone always talks about, but he has The Age of Innocence. He has The Last Temptation of Christ and Silence in his other faith movies. He has After Hours, like a silly comedy. Like it's the breadth of films he's made is so incredible, but there is a signature Scorsese style where you see that camera movement and you know who's behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Can't help but be himself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all right. Well, you're mentioning favorite people, so shall we wrap this up and then do your 4 questions?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I am now required. Well, first, so you said Treason. People can watch Treason on Tubi if they want to see it, free with commercials, but they can also get it on iTunes and Prime and other places where it's VOD. And I would highly recommend people pay a couple bucks to see it without commercials and uninterrupted. Lord knows it's not like network TV, right, where the commercials are chosen in a specific place. Like they just cut in mid-word.
As a filmmaker, it terrifies me and it horrifies me that my film is on an ad program, but people are going to see it, and that's the most important thing. I can't think of it.
Yeah, it's hard to break through the pay thing on Prime. Netflix has sort of broken the public. Yeah. The public no longer thinks they should ever pay for entertainment.
Especially as a first-timer with no recognizable talent. Like, if I have a couple more career successes, maybe we can come back and do something else with Treason. But right now, I don't blame anyone for not taking a chance. I don't do that.
Yeah. Emma becomes the it girl, and all of a sudden people go back and watch her first film.
Exactly.
It's a good plan. All right, well, that's where people can catch your film. And now I'm going to name a bunch of stuff. We didn't talk about it too much, but this podcast, Discovery Indie Film, spawned a TV series that's on Prime Video. So if people want to learn about the podcast or the TV series, just go to discoverindiefilm.com. And on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, it's at DIFWins. And I do recommend people go watch the TV series. Is actually an anthology of short films. Every episode's a half hour, 2 or 3 short films. And it's just the cream of the crop from the festival circuit, because I personally got sick and tired of watching short films never end up on, they just don't get a lot of love on streaming, because I don't have the time to go try to find halfway decent shorts on Prime Video. It's just no way. So anyway, so the TV series is a shortcut, and I'm also just going to mention we talked about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival where Treason had its theatrical premiere. If you want that, we hold that every November, and if you want to hear about it, ShermanOaksFF.com, and social media, it's at ShermanOaksFF. And there is a sister festival, because when we launched, we couldn't decide what to name the festival, so we started 2 festivals. So every June we have Film Invasion Los Angeles, and you can learn about that at filminvasionla.com, and it's at Film Invasion LA on social media. Are you a social media guy? Is there a handle that you want to throw out?
Yeah, so I've got, for my production company, Bear Elegance Productions, we are at Bear Elegance on Twitter and Instagram.
BEAR?
Yep, exactly.
BEAR Elegance.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. I won't make the joke. So anyway, all right, well, this is cool. Well, you just heard all about Eric DePriester and his film Treason, and the next episode of this podcast is going to be Eric answering the 4 questions about favorite films and maybe some films he doesn't like so much. So that's always a fun one. All right. Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
And thanks, everyone, for listening.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.